Welcome to episode 91 of the Road is Dead podcast. I'm your host, Rob Curtis. Here in the studio,
Tim Strelecki.
Leah Sanda.
Joining us again. And as always, or as usual, out in Colorado, we have...
This is Mike Friedman. Here I am.
There we go. So, another episode. Leah, welcome back.
Yes, good to see you.
We haven't had you for 2 episodes, 3 episodes, something like that.
Something like that.
You've been missed.
Thank you.
We need some rational discussion.
We officially have the band back together, all 4 members.
Yep. All right. Lots going on this week, but I guess it was 2 weeks ago. The Athens Current. Yes.
Athens Twilight.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago.
Was that the race? Athens Twilight?
Yeah, it was Athens. Pretty sure it was.
I think it was Spartanburg.
Athens Twilight.
Was it? It was in Georgia.
I think it was Spartanburg. I don't know. We
Could have
look
been.
it up real quick. Let's look it up because we got to have that right.
Yeah, we got to have that right. What we're talking about, obviously, is we're getting into the crash on the second to last lap, closing laps.
I do not know which lap it was.
I don't know which lap it was either, but was it the last corner? Somebody said it was the last corner.
I think it's 2 to go. Because they sweep through. It's 2 to go.
Big crash.
It was the left-hand turn.
It was a left-hand turn.
That's right.
The only one? No.
All right, the big story, though, obviously, is that Legion was running a train. And I can't even remember the team. Another rider came in, shot the inside. There was a wreck. And I can't remember who was on the front of that, but now they're pretty banged up and broken. And there were some immediate calls for suspension of the rider that came in on the inside. And a lot of up in the arm yelling and complaining. And the reality of this is that there's a lot of ways to take your point of view on that. And I kind of want to discuss it and get everybody's input because all of you have raced crits at very high levels, at different capabilities and all sorts of stuff. And you've seen a lot of things. So what's the general discussion about the idea of what happened here? Anybody want to step in on that?
My standpoint is it's purely a racing incident. Was it right? Who knows? But things happen in races. Things happen in the front of the pack. Things happen in the middle of the pack. Things happen in the back of the pack. It's a racing incident. That's how I saw it.
What did you see, though? Describe what you saw.
I saw Legion having their train, as you had said, Rob. I think it was, from the view that I saw, it looked like 3 or 4 Legion. Justin Williams was in there, one of the riders in the train. I think Ty Magner was on the front. And previously, before that incident had happened, I think Danny Summerhill tried to shoot up the right-hand side, was blocked by Justin Williams. So maybe the rider that caused the incident saw that, tried to jam up the inside and take that line away. And from the vantage point that I saw, I think it caught, I believe it's Ty Magner on the front, but I think it caught him off guard. And by the time the rider on the inside caught up to Magner's wheel, you could see in the video that Ty was already committed to leaning into that corner. And I think it totally caught him by surprise. And, the crash ensued. I take it, it is what it is. It happened. You can't undo it. Was it right? Who knows? If I'm that rider making the kind of the kamikaze move, I would only make that move if I was a little more confident in my abilities. Granted, 2 to go. Things are chaotic. Everyone's, almost on the rivet. So who knows? There's a million things that, we could speculate, but we weren't there. We only know what we see. We only know what's talked about.
It's our job to speculate, though.
Yeah, but was it right? Who knows? It's racing. It happened.
So your take is it was, hey, things happen. It was a move.
Yeah.
No.
That's my take.
Could have been fine. Could have been bad. But at the end of the day, shit like this happens.
I mean, personally, I've made moves like that when I race crits, in much smaller gaps on the inside. But I'm also racing masters, and I politely announce that I'm coming on the inside so it doesn't spook whoever it is. And I'm confident in my abilities as a bike handler that I'm going to get in that corner. Yeah, it may freak you out, but guess what? I'm going to hold on to this and we're going to come out of this just fine.
Yeah, I totally get that. I hate the people that freak out, but that's my own thing.
And one last thing, it fully looked like it caught Ty Magner off guard just from what I saw in the video.
That's not Ty Magner. It's Robin Carpenter on the front.
Is that him on the front? Okay,
yeah,
my apologies. It's hard to tell who was who, and the video I was watching was grainy and whatever. But
one got hit and taken down. The other one ended up in the hospital, right?
I don't know. I mean, the video after the fact showed that they still had two guys, in front of Justin. So I don't,
Yeah. Well, there's
know.
One Legion rider that gets kicked out the one side. Regardless.
Yeah. I mean,
the specifics and who was involved in what. We're just looking at the actual specific moment in racing with no regard to who it was or what was going on.
Yeah. Right.
So I don't know. What do you think, Mike? What's your take?
You looking at me? I have a few thoughts. Number one, racing is dangerous. It's dangerous. When you get on the start line, you're in a bike race. So it is dangerous. And in that race, you have a whole host of different talent and abilities. Okay. When you enter.
But arguably, this is the top level race in Speed Week.
That doesn't mean everyone's got talent.
It's a Pro 1-2 field. Right? Okay. It's a Pro 1-2 field. So you have categories from professional. I'm pretty sure it was Pro 1-2 field. I'm pretty sure it was Spartanburg, Georgia, Speed Week. So on that start line, you have a plethora of categories of ridership, right? You have guys that are quite good and guys that are good enough to be there physically, but may not have the bike handling skills. The gentleman who crashed because it's a perfect storm. When you watch the video, Robin is turning in just as this guy is coming up next to him on the left, right? The guy coming up, taking over the Legion guys, is coming up the middle of the road. He's off the race line that you would take to dive bomb that corner. There's a lot of room, and you can watch the riders follow through. After the accident happens, there's no one else crashes really, right? So there's lots of room to get around that crash, and they all take the inside line. So this gentleman accelerates, goes past these guys, gets to a point where he is off the race line at the exact instant that Robin is turning in, right? And caught him by surprise. And, there was a crash that ensued because there was just bad timing from that aspect. The other aspect is that the guy was off the race line. If you're going to take the inside line, you take the inside line and commit to it. He was not taking the inside race line. He was taking the middle of the line. That being said, Legion did not have control of the race. You have 4 guys. I think they were only allowed 6 in the race, and I didn't see 6 guys on the registration sheet. I could be wrong, okay? But Legion was not going fast enough to string out the field. They did not have control of the front. They may have had riders on the front, but that doesn't mean you have control. Did the guy make a bad decision? Abso-freaking-lutely. The guy made a bad decision for how he was passing and where he was passing. And I know a host of other really talented bike riders would have easily dive bombed that corner and taken off and attack there. It's a great place to attack, right? I mean, regardless of what the speed was coming into that turn, you're either going to be braking going into that turn or you're not braking going into that turn and holding the front. But when you're controlling the front, your speed has to be high enough where the field is strung out and that a rider who's going to overtake cannot do so easily without taking a massive risk. It didn't look to me that the speeds were as I read at 40 miles an hour. 40 miles an hour is awfully fast. And at even 35, that's a pretty high speed where the field should be strung out single file. It should not be 3 and 4 abreast behind. So it was not total control, right? When you're controlling a race, you're managing your speed, you're riding a race line. Also, Legion was off their race line of control. They're on the outside. Now, I don't know what it looked like prior to that turn because you swing back out to the race line is inside, outside, back to the inside, right? You hug the inside line, swing out for that turn, come back to the inside. If you look at that video, Legion's lined up around on the right-hand side of that fence line, and the entire field behind them is also lined up to the right-hand side of the fence line. If they'd been taking the race line, they would have been to the left side of the barriers, right? So there's a couple different factors that played into this crash. Do I think that the guy deserves a suspension? No, because I don't know what his race level is. I don't know that it was obviously not intentional, and it wasn't controlled either by Legion or this guy. You know, the guy caused the crash. Okay, he definitely caused the crash. That doesn't mean that he's the only factor that caused that crash. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah, I'd say so.
you know, there's all kinds of stupid shit that happens in bike races, and it's not all rider error, but a lot of times it is rider error, just like the Gila crash. I mean, the Gila crash that took down more than half the field at 50 miles an hour was the result of some guy taking his hands off the handlebars at 50 miles an hour. That is a dumb decision as a bike rider. So as a bike rider, or bike racer rather, when you're a bike racer, you're in a situation where your adrenaline is, you're reading the situations. You can't just, you're not on a group ride, which would also be dumb to take your hands off. It's the speeds. It's the assessing where you are in the race. It's assessing the corner. You're taking all this information in and then driving your bicycle through these conditions that either gets you through with a result that you're looking for. In this guy's case, attacking because it was 2 to go, right? So he was taking a flyer and misjudged the corner completely. Right. At the same time, you know, Legion did not have control at the front. Regardless of how many guys they had on the front, you can have 8 guys lined up. If you're not going fast enough, I would like to see the data, not just off Strava, of actually how fast the guys were going. I am really hard pressed.
Strava, and from what we can see on that, we all acknowledge there's an issue with data on Strava.
Yeah, but they're not. It's not the only way to track. You know, these guys can't breathe without their computer. Okay.
No, they have it. Somebody's got the
data. Yeah, someone's got the data, and I would love to see what that data suggests because, you know, in these cases, especially when you're announcing suspension, the facts matter. You know, and if you're going 40 miles an hour, the field is not bunched up the way it is bunched up in this race. So, you know,
can we all just take a read of the room? 40 miles an hour, yes?
No.
40 miles an hour, no.
No.
Yeah, no. I don't think there's anybody here that believes that they were going 40 miles an hour.
I'll say this. If you watch the crash happen, Robin took a big time digger. He went right up and over the bars. And even at 28, 30, 32, you know, whatever mile an hour they were going, he ends up going over the bars and smashes his left side into the ground when you're hitting pavement. And this is a testament to how fucking tough cyclists are compared to like soccer players or many other sports. I mean, the man is broken in numerous places, and I feel really bad that he got hurt. I mean, you never want to see anyone get hurt, right? But you know, crashes do happen, and stupid decisions make a big difference in the outcome of a race and the health of the riders racing that race. And it is really unfortunate to see people get hurt and, you know, and see crashes happen, but crashes happen in bike racing.
So welcome back to American Crit Racing.
Yeah. So, Leah, your take?
Probably not all that different from Mike. I see 2 sides of the coin that contributed to the crash. One was the person coming up, making the pass, misjudged, and made I don't think it was worthy of what are they talking? Suspension or whatever. No, but like Mike was saying, I mean, on the outside, you know, they didn't have control. They weren't defending their position. They weren't going fast enough. They should have known that that they were leaving a door open and should have been watching for this to happen, because this shit happens all the time. So at their level of experience on the front, they should have been watching for this. Or have they gotten so cocky that they just think nobody would dare do this to them?
I don't know that it's down to cockiness.
That's
I don't know that it's. I think it's more about frustration in the field. You have a team. The depth of the ridership that's in the U.S. right now is not the same depth, and I'm going to say it, that it was 10 years ago. Okay, and I will refract that a little bit, because at these individual races, you have races going on across the country, right? So you're not going to pull in all the talent to be at the one race. Okay. So at this, again, without looking at the guy who basically caused a crash without looking at his palmares, without looking at his results and his racing experience. We have no idea what his level of ability actually is. He might have been a Cat 1 for the last year or two. Who knows, But the bottom line is, and you're right, Leah, they didn't close the door. They didn't communicate very well. But it is very hard to communicate when you have the fans yelling in your ear. You're going at a speed where the wind is blowing through your ears, and then you're trying to navigate to your teammate 3 or 4 guys up, just in front, like up, down, like you have to communicate, but that is not always easy to do. You usually have keywords, go, but go sounds a lot like no, right? So we would have keywords, and it's very difficult to look over your shoulder and navigate when someone's making a move like that. The thing is they were not going fast enough. They were not on the race line. They did not have good control of the front of the race, and it opened a door for a mistake to happen. And the guy who made that move, while it is a nefarious move, he still made the move with hopes that he was going to get through the turn. I know, like I said, I would have done that move. I would have gone to the inside and would have hit that corner for sure, underneath Legion, 100% for sure, and come out without crashing anybody, for sure. So,
I think that's a key point, a key takeaway. You were going to jump in and say something.
No, Mike touched on it with the communication aspect of it. Just that in everything that I've ever seen Legion do, they're always shouting. Someone from the back is always screaming. And to Mike's point, with the wind, with the speeds they're going, with the wind in your ear, words sounding like other words, maybe there was some miscommunication and the riders in the back didn't shout out to whomever was in the front, alerting them of the kamikaze rider on the inside to prevent it from happening. But
this is not enough time.
Probably by the time that they overtook the back of the Legion train, he was already up to the front and it was too late by then. What are you going to do? So communication's a moot point. And that's all. That's really all I was going to say.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't think it comes. Yeah. Go for it, Rob.
Here's my take. First of all, the obvious disclaimer: I don't race criterions at the levels that you guys do. I've been in a lot.
Used
of them,
to,
but
I retired.
But there's a lot of key things that I take from it. I agree with almost everybody so far. The key things to me, and it's the same thing that I tell a lot of racers when they come back and complain about a bunch of stuff, is if you don't like it, go faster. Things just take care of themselves when you go faster. They weren't going fast enough to shut that door. Period. If they had, the door would have been shut. They were not. They obviously left the door open. I got another phone ringing. God damn it!
I'll say this since we're here. I do not think it comes down to cockiness. I think that when you have a team that's strong enough to win the majority of the races they're entering, there is definitely a level of I'll say arrogance that goes with that, but I think it's more frustration from the rest of the riders in the field. One, they know that they have these guys in the race, right? They know that they're the big guys in the race, right? They're a lot of, social media presence, a lot of, media presence. So these guys are the big hitters in the race. Okay. Number 2 or 4 on my fingers, is, where was I going with that? I was saying, it's taking a chance to dethrone Legion. I don't get, I like that they are disrupting the world of cycling and adding to cycling in many, many ways. There are things I don't like about the way they do things. That's a different subject, but I overall don't think it comes down to a level of cockiness. I think unless they're taking the front and don't think that anyone else should challenge their position, then
that's kind of what it comes down to. They're doing that.
I think what's happened over the last 2 years that Legion's been running the game is they've been doing very well at it, and their competitors are getting frustrated, and they're actually doing something about it and getting better riders on their teams to make sure their teams can compete with the strength of the Legion squad. And now the other teams involved in those high-level races are starting to figure out the Legion game and be able to compete against Legion at Legion's own game. And it's probably becoming a little bit frustrating to Legion that people are stepping up to their level and are able to quote, to compete and give them a dose of their own medicine.
I've got a lot to say on this. To finish out, and I apologize about getting the phone call, but to finish out kind of what I was saying is that I agree with everybody on the door was open. They left the door open. They shouldn't have left the door open. That's the big thing. Secondly, we've all had people dive bomb corners in crits, and inevitably, it doesn't matter how they do it. It could be the cleanest version of doing it out there. Somebody's going to have a problem with it. It's just some people have this weird notion that everything has to be by their rules and the way they think it should be done. Otherwise, it's bad and horrible and it should never have been attempted. And everyone's an idiot for thinking that they could do it. The reality is when you get through across the line first, you've pretty much won. And now we go back to, did you really do anything that was shady? Going back. What I tend to find is that when racers really throw up a lot of, it's usually because they're pissed they lost, and they're pissed that somebody actually beat them or came out with something a little bit better. Now, if
the guy made it.
There's a line. There's a line where we think, okay, no, that was a shit move. That was an okay move. 9 times out of 10, though, it's going to, at that level, it's going to be a pretty okay move. We've all had people dive bombing.
Jump in. Do you know
We've
where
had
you're
all
at?
people dive bombing corners. We know what good dive bombing and bad dive bombing is. And there's people that always complain about it, regardless of what it happens. And really, I think it's just because it hits for them an expectation they did not have. We all know bad dive bombing. When somebody goes and puts a square peg in a round hole, we know that that's quote unquote wrong, so to speak. And we all know it when we see it, kind of like good art. But it's one of those things where it's like there are no hard and fast rules. And I don't like it when people say that there are. The fact to me is that they slowed up enough that this other rider, put in 5 hard pedal strokes and was in front of them going into that corner.
Or he just didn't hit his brakes, one or the other. Right?
Yeah.
Legion was
But
probably
very
slowing
easily
before that
moved up.
turn.
Yeah, but very easily moved up. And by the time they hit the corner, his bars were in front. He was in front. Now,
well, he fucked up the race line completely, which is why he throws his body to the right, because he's way off the line that you would take at a high speed or rate to get through that corner.
Yeah,
if he had been to
disagree
the
with that.
inside, if he had been to the inside, there's lots of room to the inside. He's up the middle. I mean, he took a bad line.
It to me, I remember the first time I watched it, I looked at it, I saw him come through, I said, I see no problems with this. And then I saw the Legion rider just, massively change line, and they were on 2 different arcs. And to me, that was just like, it didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense what the Legion rider was doing. But
he was just making the turn, but they were
right.
Yeah,
I'm not in that position. I don't see the turn. I don't know, and I got to assume that he was taking the quote unquote right line through there.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
because
there's so much room on the inside of the guy that dove on the inside.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of room there. Yeah. Robin,
there was a lot of room. There was a lot of room everywhere. And me personally, the guy that ran into the other one, it never should have happened.
It never should have happened. It's also,
to both run that out, even if they did have contact, But that's okay. So that's my quick take on that. Is there any takeaways? Because there are a lot of people that do listen to us that either don't race a ton, are trying to learn something about racing, and there's a lot of newer racers that are listening to us. Is there any advice, techniques, or anything that you think a newer rider can take away from this discussion?
Yeah, there's a whole ton. I'll let you get your phone.
I don't get calls all goddamn day, and I get 3 in a row.
One of the things that I like to talk about to the women on the team when they're new to racing, and so we do crit clinics and stuff like that. And one of the things that, I'm like, it's all well and good for me to teach you what the race line is and how to turn and how to position your body to take a turn while at speed and all that stuff. And I'm like, all of this kind of goes out the window when you're in a pack, because you have to go along. you kind of have to pay attention to the line that the pack is taking, and the people at the front are going to make that determination. You can't just, I've seen people just like decide, well, I'm going to go do this line over here when the rest of the whole race is taking a different line, even if it's a shitty line. It's just like consistency, I feel like, especially at the low level, because they're at the low level, they're not really going fast enough for it to really matter that you take the exact perfect line through the turn. It's like it's more important that you just be predictable. And so that's always something that I've tried to talk people at in the beginning. But also dive bombing turns to the outside and the inside is so freaking tempting to do when you're new, because the people in front start to slow down and you've got all this momentum and you're in the draft and you're like, oh, I can just like swing to the outside or swing to the inside and pass all these people. And then you realize you get into the turn and all of a sudden you get pinched on the inside or you get scrubbed off into the curb on the outside and you're like, oh shit. And that's how crashes happen all the freaking time. So that's always like a cautionary tale, I feel like, to newer racers, is resist that temptation. If you're going to make a pass, if you're going to make a move, don't do it coming into the turn. Make sure that you're able to finish the pass and be in a position, an obvious position, before you're actually making the turn.
I think you hit the nail on the head, though, being consistent. It's when you're unpredictable that problems happen. And even if you just take bad lines everywhere, people get to know you pretty quick and can deal with you or get around you. I can list some people that never learned that, but I think consistency is the key and predictability is the key, and win on your merits.
I would think my advice would be don't race until you're comfortable being in a pack. That means find the biggest, fastest group ride you can do. Don't necessarily try to ride the front if it's above your capabilities. Fit in where you can flow and understand what's happening when people are around you, how your bike works when you have other people around you, how you react to other people being around you. And in that ride, don't try to do anything other than learn. At the end of it, find someone that you could maybe ask a few questions to. Maybe there's a group ride leader. Maybe there's a couple. Maybe there's a small team that leads the group ride. Find them, talk to them, see if they can mentor you and give you more tips about doing the group ride properly and things you want to accomplish while you're in a large pack like this. Have them mentor you, get comfortable with being in all sorts of different experiences. So when you go and actually race, all the scenarios and situations that you may be put in, you have some level of familiarity with, and you won't freak out, hit your brakes, cause a crash yourself, end up in the grass, whatever the case may be. The more comfortable you can be when you take the starting line with situations that can arise, the better experience you're going to have for your first race or your first handful of races, and probably the more respect you will get from the competitors in your field.
I almost wholeheartedly agree with that. The only place where I would differentiate in my take is I don't want people not to try racing just because they haven't been able to find a big group to ride in.
Okay.
But I would throw the caveat in there to get to what you're getting at, that the odds are if you haven't been riding in big group rides anyway and you're just new to racing, you're going to get spit out the back anyway, so you're not going to be a problem in the corners. But here's the big but. Like big butts. If you find yourself getting into corners later in the race when it starts to get fast and you're starting to realize that maybe you don't know what you're doing, have enough self-awareness to just ease up and come back. Sit back and watch. If you're really in there in your first race, you're going to be strong enough to be in there in your second race and third race. So sit back, watch, learn, and do a little bit of self-preservation to figure out how it all goes. That's my take. Is that a reasonable? Only because I'm at the point now where I think there's just not enough opportunities out there for so many people, and anyone who even remotely thinks about racing needs to go and try it, because it's going to be at a Cat 5 level anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what level it's at. If you get someone that's excited about racing, they don't know a thing about racing, they go toe the line, they crash, guess what? I don't want to race anymore. Done.
Oh, I don't disagree that
Learn how to ride your bike around people and in a good, safe way, and bring it to the competition. Don't go from the sofa to the start line.
I don't think anybody does, though.
Or don't go from Swift to the start line either.
And those that do don't stay in the pack long. Honestly, I've almost never seen it. The only thing I've ever seen is the Robbie Ventura trained athletes that have absolutely no handling capability whatsoever end up in crits because they're at the end because they've got a FTP of 350 and a 4% body fat, even though they're 52.
All right, let's all get the professional's opinion. Mike, the floor is yours.
Well, there's a lot to cover in what we're discussing, because it really depends on what level rider you are. And group rides only generate so much experience. You get some pack experience, but depending on the group ride you're doing, it really varies on the terrain, the speed of the group ride, and certainly the course. You're not going to get any turning in a group ride. Not at least at 90 degrees at speed. When you have a 90-degree turn or a sweeping turn at speed, is very different than experiencing that when you're in a controlled group environment. So you have to race your bike in order to learn how to race your bike. And whether that's starting in a Cat 5 category or any other, categories that lead up to the professional level racing, there is a lot to learn, because turning and riding a criterium is an art form. And even the best guys, as we saw in the crashing, and the lines that they're taking don't always nail it. You forget sometimes that you got to, pick the right line. That all said, you got to know your ability. You got to know what you can fit through. You got to know that you can trust your equipment. You got to know your bar width. You have to know how to handle your machine. If you are turning at speed and taking a risk, the risk is not only to yourself, but it's to the other riders next to you and the rest of the people behind you. And there's some level of responsibility on that. I'm sure the guy who crashed from that, from the one team feels awfully guilty. I would hope. And Legion has every right to be upset by a move like that, I think. But in terms of learning, you don't learn just by, you got to do lots of races in lots of different situations and in lots of different weather conditions, because racing is done in all those things. These guys were racing, I think, at 7:30 at night, which means it was dark, right? They're under street lights. So the conditions are different. The speeds are different. So, I don't think there is any beginner riders in this field, except that a Cat 2 level rider, and I'm pretty sure it was a Pro 1-2 field, is still a beginner rider when it goes up to a pro level rider. If I had been crashed by, and I don't know what the guy's category was, right? I don't know what his category was. And again, I don't know what racing history he has or his results are, okay? But a Cat 2 rider to where I was when I finished my career was a very different level of ridership and a different level of handling skill and a different level of reading the situation. So any racer at a Cat 5 level to a pro level has to read their situation and know what risk they can take without having catastrophic failure. Because at the end of the day, you're either going to go up the road and, maybe you win the race, maybe you don't, or you're going to crash when you're taking a risk like this. And like I said, I've done this numerous times in tighter corners. Okay. Turning by itself is not as simple as just turning left or turning right. It's not that simple. It's, you are taking in the speed, you're taking in your tire pressure, you're taking in the structure of the pavement, you're taking in the paint on the lines, you're taking in the sewer covers, you're taking in to where the barrier fencing is, you're taking in the conditions of the wind. Is there moisture? Yeah. Is there moisture on the pavement? Is the pavement in an area that's at a red light and there's oil all over the road? There's all these factors that go into turning, and it's not as simple as just turning. So, you have to really understand the physics and the level of friction you have on the ground and what the speeds are. And then also what angle of attack can you pedal through, right? I mean, there's all these factors that go into turning, and it's not as simple as, oh, we're going to turn left now. Oh, we're going to turn right now. And I would say that all these factors are included when you're riding with a group, especially in a race, right? You don't, it doesn't go out the window necessarily. It's added on in complexity when you have all these other people around you doing the exact same thing. And that changes at the different phases of the race, from the beginning of the race when it starts to the middle of the race to the second third of the race to the finish. It changes during the race. So there's a lot to learn, and the only way to learn is by racing.
And even if you race a lot, to your point and what you were saying earlier, and this kind of leads into a nice segue, but even if you've done it a lot, even if you've reached that level of expertise, because there's so many different factors that play into it, you can have 10 experts, professionals, all looking at the same situation, and you can have 10 different opinions on what should have or should not have been done. That's because everyone races differently, and everyone has different strengths and what they're good at, what they're not good at. But it kind of brings up this whole, you have a lot of, what I tend to find is that you have a lot of heavy opinions on what is right and what is wrong and stuff like this. You got a lot of people saying that the level, even at the high level domestically, because we haven't had all the requirements and the depth of competition that we've had previously, that there are people getting up there and being in the mix that just don't have the experience that we're used to. Now, I will say, my observation, this always seems to happen, and it's a constant thread with everyone who complains. And I've noticed it's usually the riders that are very accomplished, that are fairly high up, that have had that constant.
Don't worry, keep going.
That have had that constant complaint about, there's the riders today are taking more risks. The riders today don't know how to take corners and let. They're always dive bombing to this. They're always doing. What I tend to find is it's usually from riders that have a lot of experience, and it also corresponds with a very distinct moment in time when they're becoming less competitive. And when they're becoming less competitive and they're not the ones dive bombing the corner and they're not the ones moving up on the last lap, all of a sudden everyone else who's doing that to get around them is taking unnecessary risks.
Good point.
And to me, it always comes across in the reality. It always comes, because I think of, he probably knows of this, but Holloway used to complain about that kind of stuff all the time, but it also corresponded with the moment when Holloway was not as fast as he was. And then you would have.
I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, it changes in the season too.
It's not a 1-to-1, but I would say it happens more often than not. And this, to me, this is where I'm getting at with. To me, this kind of corresponds with the whole Legion thing. It seems like Legion is having more and more problems with everybody in the last few laps, complaining about it more, saying people are taking more unnecessary risks. What's also happening is that riders are learning how to get around them. And if I go to the comments on any of these videos, what I'm seeing more and more is a long stream of people commenting in going, they have no problem dishing this out when it's them, but when they're getting it back, they can't take it and they can't handle it. And it's
that's the name of the game.
Exactly.
I was with anybody like that,
And I would posit that to them, if you think about the arc of Legion, the entire idea of Legion is based on their ability to dominate and or be the top dog out there. Their narrative is that. Their idea is that they have to be the best. And when you're not the best, what happens? What happens to Legion if they're not the best? We all know that you can have good years, bad years. You can have good races, bad races. So what happens to them when they're not the best? How does that change their narrative? How does that change what they do and what they push? And I believe a lot of this reaction from them, a lot of the, hey, we were going 40. No, you weren't. We all know you weren't going 40. But why do you say we were going 40? Because you want to make it seem like it's faster, more unattainable for anybody. You guys have no idea what we're doing up here. We're going faster than, okay. So you were going 40.
It's victimization, right? This is the name of the game when you're playing victim, right? I mean, this is the same thing that happens if you're getting into a fight with somebody, they play victim, they have excuses, right? they certainly have errors and they made in their judgment, like we've discussed. But at the end of the day, the guy was also in the wrong, and the accident. If the guy had made it through the corner, it wouldn't have been an issue, right? But he didn't make it through the corner because the timing was off and the line was off, right? But and this brings me back to a point real quick that I was going to say. What you can learn. Brad Huff used to do this all the time. Hot route, hot route, hot route. Inside. So that people knew, and he was very audible about that communication, and he could be on a separate team. And Legion's not the first team to be able to control the front. In fact, I mean, United Healthcare, the Blue Train back in the day, they were excellent at it, and they could put the speed at 35 miles an hour and hold the entire field single file, the entire race almost. Okay, yes. So but even with those guys, when we would try to compete with those guys, and they were better at it than we were, they had more horsepower in the team. They were 8 guys deep, right? When you have 4 guys, it means you have 3 guys for a lead out, plus to lead this train. Again, I don't think they had full 6. If you have 6 guys, it might be enough to actually control the field, but it's all down to speed. To speed.
Yeah, I would say that. Every race that I ever watched with them doing that, the one key thing was they kept it so freaking fast, and they kept it so fast. No one had a chance. I mean,
which is why I'm saying they weren't going 40, because it's not. It is not 40 miles an hour. It's just not. Yeah. Like, I mean, I will stand corrected and back down on that comment, but show me the data. Right? Show me what it was, and where did you take the front? Were you guys on the front for 10 laps prior to that, 5 laps prior to that? I don't know. Right? So I'm only going off of what I saw from the field, from the crash, after the crash. Right? And the guy who actually caused, the crash into the fence right after that. But if you watch the field come diving through that corner, they went all the way to the inside by a large margin. Right? So anyways.
Well, this comes back to my general thoughts that I've said before about novice racing, where it's like inevitably, if you have a non-technical course and there's a crash at the end and everybody wants to point fingers, and it's like, that's because you didn't go fast enough to take the people that were going to cause problems out of the race. And that's what it always comes down to.
Yeah. And you can go through a corner, and I've done this, and it's never really happened to me, but I've done it to other people where I go through the corner faster, and I've seen it happen to other riders, like people on Huff's wheel or even Holloway's wheel, where the people behind you crash. They can't take the corner. Yeah. They can't go through it as fast as you can. They don't have the right technique. So if person A, if person A is getting through that corner and person B or C or D can't, there's a variation in tires, whatever, but there's also a variation in technique.
Oh, I used to love doing that.
Yep.
Go through the corner so fast that it just spooks the guy and second, third wheel out, and then they're buzzing the curb and in the neighbor's lawn. So fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still go back to, handing Ramirez one time a set of wheels, fresh glued up tubulars. He did the one race and it had a ton of turns on it, handed them back to me after the race, and he had worn the hot patch off the sidewall. And he was like, man, I could corner on rails, man. I was opening up huge gaps in every corner. So,
and to your point, dude, and this is another teaching moment, and this is why, Robin, you'll totally agree with this. All you will agree with this is why you have a set of race wheels and race tires and training wheels and training tires, because you need to trust your equipment. You want your best equipment that you can trust on your race bike on race day, right? If you don't know that you can trust your equipment, then it shouldn't be on your bike. At least for race day.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. But okay, so back to I kind of wanted to draw the whole Legion thing into one more thing. Article came out this week because the CRIT, CRIT series was announced, and that is a Justin Williams and God, I can't think of the name of the
Wasserman Ventures.
There you go, marketing firm. They're doing this, and apparently, this was somebody else was in on it and was one of the founders and had developed all this, and then all of the talking died off in February. There's an article out on Cycling News about this. If you're interested, go read it. And they had a lot of sour grapes over the fact that I didn't hear anything about it. We were already through everything. I stopped hearing in February, and then it was a total shock to me. I found out when everybody else did that they announced this series, and I felt like I got snubbed and cut out. That was the basics of the article. To me, where I say the Legion comparison is that it's that narrative of being the top, being the best, being progressive, being innovative, doing something that nobody else has done. That is part of the narrative that defines what Legion is. And it's imperative to them to defend that methodology and thinking in order to maintain what they're building as a brand. This particular crit thing and not being the founder and everything else like this, to be honest with you, reading it as somebody who's been in this industry and had a lot of ideas over the years and seeing other people take those ideas and turn them into something, sorry, man. If you personally didn't have the money, didn't raise the money, or make yourself integral part of the concept and carry out the work yourself, then you're going to get left behind. It happens. It happens all the time in every industry. And I would like to say that maybe cycling is a little bit different with that, in that it tends to happen more often than not. But the only reason why it happens more often than not is because there's less money to go around in all of this. So you're always at the whims of the person that has the money. And if you didn't make yourself indispensable, it happens. You know how many times I would still be in court right now fighting over ideas and technology that I came up with and talked to people about, and then they carried out into the marketplace and turned something into it. Or that they did a better job at marketing and came out as getting more appreciation for what I had already been doing. You know, it's like you can't sit here and have sour grapes over that kind of crap. That's business. It just is what it is, and you move on. That's my take.
It's a dog eat dog world.
Yeah. You know, and you don't get any special credit for having the idea first. You know, I know we like to think that everybody is protected for having ideas and that you should get credit for your ideas. You can get credit for your ideas if it's a good idea, and then you can actually take it to fruition or find the people that can and help them do that. But if you're just like, man, I thought of that. Yeah, how many times in your life you sat there and looked at something in cycling and gone, man, I thought of doing that like 10 years ago.
None.
You've never done that?
Oh, I'm not smart enough.
But you've never like looked at like some new innovation that comes out and gone, I've been doing that kind of crap for 5 years.
Nope.
Well, okay.
But that's just me. That's just me.
I don't think that I'm particularly smart in that regard, but it has happened to me on more than one occasion. Anyway.
So your take on it?
The crit thing. Anybody else has another take or want to argue with me? Or?
Well, I think. Yeah, go ahead, Leah. Go ahead.
I mean, just on the surface, it seems like maybe they stole a concept or idea, but I don't think we have anywhere near enough information, and it's not like it's a new concept or idea. And
exactly.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing.
And so, it's.
I would almost say that NCL has more of a call and getting pissed off at them than
right. I just and
even they are like, hey, we hope they succeed.
And like I think it's like it's interesting though that there's so many people that are trying to fight over the having these crit series in a sport that's like barely alive.
And yet, barely alive. And yet, what did we hear? What did you hear during the podcast?
Oh, the crit in Georgia had the most spectators, or it seemed that this was the biggest event attended by spectators in probably 3 to 4 years. But again, that's the whole ambience of the event. It's at night. It's Mike, you had said there's other things going on, art shows and all sorts of other nightlife going on. People are down in that city already, and there just happens to be a bike race on. So you go from bar to bar. Oh, hey, let's check out the bike race. And guess what? The crowd grows and the crowd grows and the crowd grows, and it gets loud and rowdy. And it's exactly what the organizers of the event want.
Yeah, I think we're seeing those events that have put in the time and effort to build a whole experience for people. Those are the ones that are growing and succeeding and getting bigger and bigger. And our grassroots events are not able to they don't have the manpower or the funding up front to pull off these big events, and so they struggle to survive.
It's a great point. We all know that the general attendance level varies because of the amount of production that goes into it, but it's now, I would agree with everybody that it's reaching the point where it's becoming the dividing line between an event that continues and or just exists.
Right. I mean, Super Week was just about the frickin' race. There were no bells and whistles. It was about as bare bones as you could get around.
They had a party in every locality every night. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
almost to the point where they just didn't give a shit about any race that happened before the big event.
Yeah, I want to come back to the crit thing here in a second, but I will say about the racing. I mean, you have all these different audiences, right? I mean, you're not going to just cater to bike racing fans simply to get them out there to watch the bike race. Some people, sure, right? They're going to come out and watch the race and be there for the race specifically. But I think a challenge for a lot of these race promoters is how do you get people to come and show interest across a broad spectrum of interests across that audience, both locally and, locally can be, a distance away, right? What is it that you're putting on that draws people in, whether it's the bar scene or the art shows or a music festival or any of the other above things that have to be organized and planned. And then the race by itself, while it's amazing, it may not be the main draw, but it is a draw for when things are going around. I mean, the announcing is loud, the racing is the cheering, all that stuff that goes into it. That all said, yeah, it's a spectacle. That all said, and I do not want to diminish the importance of hosting local racing, because local racing is how you build to that level, right? You have to have the grassroots racing structure, and racing is awesome. So, how do you make your local event, that happens, often enough that it generates enough interest to continue on? And I'm going to use Pittsburgh, the ACA, as an example. They have the weekly race series that happens every Wednesday night World Championships, down at the Oval in downtown Pittsburgh. And it's awesome. It's not downtown Pittsburgh. It's just outside the city, but it's awesome. Every single week you can go down there and test your grit and practice your racing skills and test your fitness. And it builds over the season, right? And only then, after you're doing those races, can you think about going, out of town to a bigger event where they have a lot more effort put into the venue that draws people in. But back to the crit thing, I totally agree with you, Rob, in terms of, effort and IP. I think that there probably is some truth to that article about how that guy felt.
Oh, sure.
In terms of his feeling really disheartened and let down, and that it was one of the biggest, I forget how it was worded. I didn't read the whole thing, but it was worded in the effect that it was like the biggest heartache in business that he's ever experienced. And there's probably a number of factors that go into that. And, the Legion program, and the Williams brothers taking that on, there's a lot of business decisions that go into that stuff, like you're saying as well, and money that gets thrown around. But as Frank Cundiff said, a rising tide lifts all boats, lifts all ships, right? So if you've got a guy that's willing, I know who knows what the agreement was, and who knows if this guy was expecting to get a payday out of it, and who knows, and maybe there was a legitimate reason they had to push him out, and you just change the name. I mean, copyright stuff is not really that complicated to get around, and, like copying stuff is not, you just change, what the definition of a letter means, and boom, there you go. It's not the same, so yeah. But that being said, I always like to see, it's hard to say because, but when it comes down to racing, I like to see people helping people. I don't like seeing articles like that where it's like, I was totally burned, like that rubs me the wrong way, just from an ethical standpoint. That being said, it doesn't mean it's the best business standpoint, right? I mean, there's lots of decisions that get made, and where's the communication? It's like, look, dude, like, we're going to go our own separate way. And maybe that existed. I don't know, but at the end of the day,
like, to be honest with you though, that's like somebody saying, why wasn't I given a heads up for being fired?
Yeah.
You never get a heads up for being fired. You never get a heads up when somebody is going to take over a position that's yours. It's just not how things work.
Yeah, you just let go, for sure. And in the business world, that is the truth. And to what Leah said, there is a lot of different, and I kind of like to see, all these different variations of these race series going on. It means it's thriving. There's investment. There's money being thrown at these things. I don't know how you work together that lift each other up, but there is definitely being money thrown around. So
that's a great point. And I think that we miss this too much. And I think too many people miss this too much, is that we all want to see intuitively we want to see the right thing happen, the right race series happen, and we want all of the money to go to that. And why can't you all work together and make what? The reality is that never happens.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as the right one. And if you get 3 or 4 going at it and have some money going at it, hey, cool.
It's good for everybody. It's good for everyone.
They're all going to learn something from somebody, and we can't start with the perfect one from scratch. So, if it works, it works, and we'll know. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and we'll be talking about it on some future episode.
And more racing across the spectrum is important. More racing is better for everybody, right? One thing that I would like people to start doing, though, is to dig into the teams that you follow or pay attention to and look at the sponsors. Very few people, including myself, ever really look at the sponsors of a team, right? The ROI is from people's eyes seeing what's on that kit, right? Those sponsors allow those teams to exist. So, as a fan of cycling, and I'm going to start making a change in this, and I've started already, is looking at who is on that jersey in terms of sponsoring. That's the only way to really get the ROI out.
You're preaching to the choir on that one. I have made many posts over the years where I will take products of companies that readily sponsor cycling, especially in the grocery store, and I've thrown them in the cart, taken pictures of the cart, and posted it. Being like,
I say thanks for
when you
sponsoring
have the opportunity. Yeah, when you have the opportunity, support those. Like I had a cart that had who was the peanut butter sponsor years back.
Peanut Butter and Company, wasn't it?
Was it Peanut Butter and Company?
Yeah.
They had peanut butter. I had grabbed that, thrown it in the cart. I had Nature Valley granola bars in the cart, and there was like 2 or 3 other things, that I had grabbed and thrown in the cart. It was like, hey, if you're going to get the stuff or you're going to be in that segment anyway, every now and then maybe grab that sponsor's product. Yeah, if you have an allergy and you can't.
Yeah, take a look, see what they have to offer. You never know, and a lot of those companies aren't big time companies. Some are, some aren't, right? So yeah, invest your money into some of those.
I get Butcher Box. I never would have heard of Butcher Box if they hadn't sponsored a bike racing team. So when I started thinking about getting stuff delivered to my house, I was like, I'm gonna go to Butcher Box.
I get my EPO from Amgen.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, and a lot of the race organizers don't necessarily promote that either. I think there's some level of responsibility that goes to that. Like if you're drawing fans to the website, here's the teams who are, coming. And I get it. Their social media page, their website, their team website. And if you look, I was looking at some of the results of this last Spartanburg race to see, I couldn't find who the guy was that, pretty much caused the accident. But I was looking for the team, and, everyone's got a different taste to their feeds, but I encourage people to go in and dig around and see who's sponsoring who, because I think that's the best way to get, product ROI, sponsor ROI investment back, is to get eyes on the product. It's an obvious thing. So, but most people don't do that. Right. And it's hard to see in cycling too. It's hard to see unless it's plastered on your, the title sponsor, but there's all these other incidental sponsors that are really important, anyways.
You made me think of, just trip my memory of the thing I keep saying. I love that we're now going to naming teams not based on who the primary sponsor is. It's always been my thing. I always think that we needed to do it. There's been people that argue against that, but I do like with the Miami Knights, the Denver Disruptors, all that. I mean, they're now trade teams, and they're utilizing a generic name that's going to stay with the team regardless of who the sponsor is. And that I like. I think that's a good move.
Well, it only works though for like teams like, football or NBA or baseball, because they're selling tickets, right? I mean,
well, and they can work for us if it's standard.
Yeah,
if
but
it's
so
not the industry standard to do that, then you're always going to have a sponsor that comes in and goes, yeah, I'll give you the money, but you need to name the team after me. But if we just go, that's just
so. How do you sell that? How do you sell that when you go to a sponsor? How are you selling that pitch, right? I mean that, and what is the return? How many eyes? How many products are you going to sell to get back the money you're investing in this team? Right? It's coming from a budget somewhere.
I'm not saying that your kit doesn't have the sponsor name plastered right there, but why the hell isn't your team name still the team name? You know what? It just, for me, there's so many teams. I heard the other day about a European team in the current peloton that is some team. I don't remember what it is, but they are actually some team that I used to follow in the 80s or 90s and I thought had disappeared, but it's actually the same team. That would have been nice to have known, you know. Some of them and most of them, we know the progression of them over the years. But I can't remember what team it was, but I heard that from an announcer and I was like, really? I had no idea.
It's probably Movistar.
It maybe was. Who?
I know my history.
What was Movistar in the 80s, 90s?
Oh shit! They were Il Baleares. They were a bunch of different things. They were I know that was one of their iterations. I don't know where it went from there, but I know that there's teams within the Pro Peloton that were one thing at one time and have morphed into
Benesto. Was it Benesto? I don't know. I don't know the history. Yeah, but it is interesting to track the history of the team. Yeah, like Slipstream is EF
team name. There you go.
Yeah.
And if Slipstream, if we could follow Slipstream through the years, you know, we would just say, oh, like it'd be so much easier to just say, oh yeah, but no, Mike used to race on Slipstream.
Or Optum and Rally, you know, Human Powered Health is Kelly Benefit Strategies. Yeah, Circuit Global Health or Circuit Global Sports was the company, you know. Slipstream was the parent company for EF. There's a whole team of people, and it just carries forward with the changing sponsorship. I do think it's a challenging thing to pitch. You have to have money coming from somewhere. So if you're pitching to the sponsor, you're going to be the title sponsor, but you're not really on the title sponsor. That's a difficult pitch.
No, you're the title sponsor, but our team name is X.
Yeah, that's a difficult thing. That's a difficult thing when you're not getting enough eyes on it.
It's happening.
Yes and no.
The Denver Disruptors,
yes and no.
The
yes, but they're owned by the NCL. They're owned by the NCL. So
but
it's a different model.
It's establishing what could be a norm if others start to follow it. It's an
opportunity. If I'm cutting a check for $10 million, you better bet your fucking team is going to have my logo and it's going to be called that.
And also, you better hope that the races you're going to are high enough level races that TV coverage picks it up.
If I'm dropping a shitload of money, guess what? I'm getting this.
But that's the thing, though, when you think about it, is that a lot of domestic teams, they're not getting $10 million checks.
Right.
They're selling their soul for what they could really, honestly, almost take or leave. And then again, some of those programs do have their own independent names.
Right. And then you're going to ask someone in a domestic Peloton that is getting supported by a smaller domestic brand that's probably, you know, fought tooth and nail for however many hundreds of thousands of dollars for their budget to not put that brand or be associated with that brand by name. Like,
no, I don't.
That doesn't make sense.
That's where we had the whole powered by generation, which
presented by, powered by. Yeah.
Yeah. Admittedly, that was a bit of a mouthful.
Actually, it was kind of a great idea. You know,
it's a good idea, though. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you have to say that stuff in the media. I mean, it was always the thing. We had to have all this media training so that you get those plugs in there. Because, now with social media, it's changed a lot. Social media didn't exist when I was racing. It was just coming on into the platform. But now, a lot of that is based off. We talk about this in the gravel scene. You know, if you don't have enough social media following to pitch these, what is the ROI? It comes down to the return on the investment, right? If you're investing in Team X, you need result Y.
Yep.
That's a great point, though, about gravel. How are we referring to gravel? It's all individuals, and we refer to the individual. That's the team name. We don't discuss who their sponsors are.
That's a good point. I can't tell you any of the sponsors that sponsor Stetna or those other guys, but I also don't pay attention to that.
Shitload of sponsors.
Exactly. But
that are affiliated with an individual.
But we don't talk about that individual as the sponsor.
No. We talk about that as a person,
that individual talks about their sponsors through their social media channels.
Their team name is them.
Yeah.
And unless the name of their team.
And unless you're paying attention to it over time, you don't or focus in on the sponsors. Like I haven't focused in on those sponsors representing those riders, Specialized a couple of them, but I don't know any other sponsors because I haven't focused on it.
Well,
which is my whole point in saying, you take the time to see who's representing these riders or these teams and then go check out their stuff. Support those companies and then send a comment why you're buying their product.
Do we follow, I can think of mountain biking. Mountain biking, we follow more of the individual than the team, yes?
Yeah.
There's been eras where it's been both.
Yes and no. I would say.
Tinker Juarez, who was he sponsored by forever?
Cannondale.
There you go. So there's a sponsorship where it was never Cannondale presented by Tinker Juarez.
Yeah, you are the brand, which is actually probably why the social media
He was on
stuff
the
counts.
Cannondale team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and then when he wasn't, he was still a Cannondale racer, and you thought of Cannondale.
It's just like Ted King. Ted King, who was he sponsored by for forever?
Cannondale still is.
Cannondale.
Right. Leaky Gas was Cannondale team.
I was going to say
and then he was on EF, Cannondale team.
Untapped, but
nope. Well, that's his brand.
That's his company.
It's his company.
So
of course he's attached to it.
But it's just an interesting concept for me because it's a different venue. It's cycling, albeit it's not multiple individuals altogether. But we do refer to Cinch, I guess, when they were causing all their problems in gravel.
It's not causing this. Well, it's not. Yeah, I'm not. Hey,
I'll leave that one there.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, bike racing is.
I used to always be curious. Like you see the European Peloton, and you're like, "What is that company?" And then you Google it, and you find out, oh, it's a window brand.
It's the national
floor company. It's Mape.
It's something completely weird, and you're like, "Oh, okay."
The Lotto one kind of gave itself away, though.
Yeah. Good point, there, Mike. Support those that support the sport.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. I mean, what is this posisment?
Speaking of support, if you happen to be in the market of needing some decent, amazingly wheels, go to Cymet. It's Cymet, not Cymet. Cymet.com, spelled with a P.
We're doing a special promotion. Anybody that can actually decipher what Cymet really stands for, you'll get a free pair of wheels.
No, we are not doing that promotion. There are plenty of people that know what it stands for. We've covered it many times on here, but I still get asked all the time. It's Purdue student in mechanical engineering technology. So, moving on, buttonhole chamois cream. By all means, go out and buy your buttonhole chamois cream.
Have a minty butthole.
Jesus. What have you been doing with it?
I think you're putting it in the wrong spot, girly.
Okay,
it migrates. It migrates back as you're riding.
Just a gentle reminder, buttonhole is designed for external use only.
Don't eat it.
Yeah, don't eat it.
And compare the ingredients list to whatever else you might ever use, and you will be shocked at our clean ingredients versus others.
That is a key thing.
It's a good product.
I'm not going to badmouth anyone in particular, but if you use very popular products and do take the time and look at the ingredients, I think you'd be shocked at what's in there versus what a product like buttonhole chamois cream has. Also,
this is why I tried banana peels and this is exactly why I tried banana peels and kiwi skins not long ago. Well, a long time ago now, before buttonhole came out.
If there's a long, interesting scientific word in there that may confuse you, Google its meaning and see what it stands for.
I'm not saying it basically turns into formaldehyde, but it's kind of formaldehyde. So we'll just go that route. So keep that in mind, but go and try buttonhole chamois cream. Go to your local retailer, whatever your favorite local shop is, ask for it there. If they don't have it, tell them to grab some. Very easy for any shop to get. You can also go to enzocyclingproducts.com and look up a local distributor in your area. That map should be up to date thanks to the exhaustive work that Mr. Tim Strelecki put in. So
we did it together.
We're still
doing it together.
It's an ongoing process. As always, we recommend also go out to pedalingminds.org. I'm going to keep doing this, and I will do it every week. But go out to pedalingminds.org, familiarize yourself with the organization and what's going on over there. If you see fit, which I know you will if you have a conscience, drop a dime or two or a few tens of dimes. And
I would say don't. You can support all the work and effort. Don't be guilted into this. Don't be. It's not about. It's about believing in
the. You're going to do the right thing.
It's about believing in the mission and then taking a look at the financial documents that are readily available and looking at the impact. That is what generates funding. So,
and it's okay to say, and if you feel so inclined, go ahead. And
Yeah, sure.
Mike is out there doing a good thing, developing the future of crit racing.
Yeah, we're telling you to donate. Mike is saying, make your own decision, take your time, and if it's something worthwhile, then go ahead and throw the money at it.
Yeah, I mean, I personally taught 2,000 kids how to ride a bicycle. Personally, it's a pretty good statistic. So,
and on that note, thanks for making me feel like less of a person.
That's not the
Anything
point.
Else?
That's the
else
guilt factor. Anyways,
that
good.
is the guilt factor.
Yeah.
All right. Are we saying goodbye?
I think so. I think we're getting there.
Yeah.
Should we sing goodbye? Goodbye. Goodbye. No.
No.
Okay.
But I would be remiss. I have mentioned this. You guys all know it's coming. But I would be remiss if we talked as much as we did about Ricky doing well at Gila. And I didn't mention local racer Austin Gillis winning at Gila overall. And congrats.
Way to go.
Thank you, everybody. All right. With that, enjoy the ride.